Hi, welcome back to Elder Bear Farm. Obviously, we did not continue to get the mild weather that we had the other day, where we were starting to redesign our garden bed for our garden area for permaculture principles. As you can see, we're kind of buried in snow at the moment. The Mid-Atlantic is a kind of a tough place to do urban agriculture because it's very fickle. Some years it really doesn't snow at all, and then other years we get more snow than places like Boston, Buffalo. Sometimes we're in the bullseye and sometimes we're not. This year's been pretty mild, but this was a pretty good snow, so we're gonna have to wait for temperatures to get milder again before we can recontinue this project. So I'm gonna do like a 1.5 video and talk about a component of what we were doing with this redesign that I thought might be interesting to some of the YouTube viewers. And that's this idea of raised bed gardens versus in the ground gardens. As I was getting rid of these raised beds, I know a number of viewers might be thinking, why would you get rid of raised beds? And then that kind of begs the question of what's better. And like so many other things in food growing and permaculture, it really depends. Originally, I put raised beds on this site back here because I had a lot of high water, and I wanted to get the soil up above that flood level, essentially, so that my crops would not get continuously inundated with water. And it worked really well for that. As I started to correct some water management problems all over the rest of my property, because this is pretty much the low point of the entire property, hence the issues. And as I corrected them up higher on the property, which we're going to make another video to talk about, really the issues over here don't exist anymore. And so I don't really have a need for this, for the soil to be elevated like it was before. Another issue was a poor soil quality. And so it probably goes without saying, but with all the flooding issues over here, like the soil quality wasn't that great. It was a lot of clay, which exists kind of piecemeal all over my property. But there really was not good drainage to begin with. And that's another reason why you might want to raise beds, so that you can really control the soil quality and put in amendments, kind of like start from scratch, put in something that really helps you to grow crops in the soil medium that you want. Growing in ground can be really advantageous because it allows you to work with land contours and trap water better. When the soil's raised up, that means it's also going to dry out faster, which is good sometimes. If you're in a climate where you feel like you can count on it being really wet, then that might be an absolute necessity so that the roots can stay dry. But if you're in a climate that is fickle, like here in the Mid-Atlantic, and I know a lot of places in the continental US are fickle in this way, some years you get drought, some years you get too much rain, you cannot control the water management in the same way that you can with an in-ground bed when you're using raised beds. Because you're boxing in the soil, you're elevating it up, all that drainage is going to go out. It's going to warm up quicker because it's elevated up, and all those things can contribute to you having to do a lot more watering than you might want to do. Another issue is just around the kind of fixed size of it, and that is usually not an issue if you plan it well to begin with. But I know I personally like to change things around on occasion, depending on, sometimes I might switch something from an annual garden to a perennial garden, or I might just use an annual garden in a different way from year to year. And raised beds being this kind of fixed shape and size, that can be a little bit frustrating sometimes. Another issue is just in terms of maximizing your space. Raised beds can be really good for that because with the elevated soil, you're gaining maximized growing space. That's one of the whole ideas behind a square foot gardening. However, if you design in-ground beds really well, you use things like keyhole type of shapes, you can really maximize your planting space with in-ground beds as well. And in some cases, you also can minimize the amount of maintenance that you have to do around the space. And that was something I talked about in the first part of this video, is I was really tired of mowing around these raised beds, and I wanted to just convert this entire area. Now, I could have left the raised beds, of course, and then just got rid of the grass between, and that would have solved that problem as well. But sometimes you still get like the weeds that grow up right at that edge between the wood of the raised bed and then the natural area, and you have to come through with a weed eater or pull them out by hand or something like that. Whereas when it's just all in ground, it can be a little bit easier to maintain. At least that's been my experience, and that was one of the things that was influencing me to go ahead and get rid of the beds in the first place. And so there are a lot of different circumstances where raised beds might be the way to go versus in ground. With all the work that I've done with people in putting in urban agricultural spaces, I find that most of the time people use raised beds just because they like the tidy appearance, and they like the idea that there's a sort of set space that's allocated for them to garden in. And you know, when we look at permaculture principles, when we look at how nature does things, like nature definitely does not have rectangular areas where certain types of plants grow, and then outside of those rectangular areas, different kinds of plants grow. And that is one of the big reasons why I've gotten away from raised beds in general over the years, is because I really want to promote more natural edges. And I find that I just get better, I give a better feeling when I'm working in the garden. I seem to get better productivity. I've not done any kind of like hard data studies on that or anything, so I couldn't provide with that information. But I do find though that that is one of the main reasons that people use raised beds. They really like the tidy appearance of it, and I'm just sort of getting away from that. But long story short, in the end, it really is just kind of a circumstantial thing. Like for certain sites and certain people and certain uses, raised beds are the way to go. And other places, in-ground beds are definitely the way to go. You're of course never going to see somebody on a large-scale commercial farm, or even like just a beyond a backyard scale commercial farm. They're not going to do raised beds because of the initial cost, because of the fixed component of it, because of the upkeep and the maintenance. They're going to need the longer in-ground rows, and even if they're not tilling or anything like that, they are still probably going to prefer that just for the ease of planting, removing plants, doing any other kind of cultivation that they need around the plants, putting down mulch, all that stuff. It's all just going to be made easier on a larger scale without the beds getting in the way. All right, so hopefully this has been helpful. If we get some mild weather, we will definitely get back out here and finish this project out and show you the finished product. If you have any questions about the raised bed versus in-ground debate, or you have any experiences of your own that you can share, throw those in the comments section. Give a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe so we won't miss the final part 2 where we get back to finishing out this redesign. And we'll see you next time at Elder Bear Farm.
Snow